Great. So first, thank you, Greg and Boston Ace, for having us. We're really excited to be here to talk about risk management and how we can utilize Jira Align to help us with that process. I am Vicki Murphy. I am a solutions architect with XPM and a leader in our our Agile at Scale core competency. My role is really to help our customers implement Jira Align and also custom Jira solutions to really support Agile at Scale at an enterprise level. Really love getting to work with customers to implement these tools and really map their processes to the Atlassian tools. And we a lot of times get to work with them in this risk management area, utilizing the tools as well.
My name is Elizabeth Wheeler, and I love risk. I've been doing risk management for most of my career. And I've discovered that properly applied, risk management is more than something we have to do or we should do. It's an asset to any business. And we've got a lot of audience participation, so I'd love if everybody could find where the raise hand functionality is, or if you want to type something in the chat. We've got 2 people here, so we can manage what's in the chat and what's going on in the screen. Okay, and we're gonna do just a basic overview of risks, make sure we're all at the same level. We're gonna talk about roaming risks, which is the method that SAFe talks about, and also what's supported in Align. And we're of course gonna talk about how to manage those in Align. Okay, so risks. When we talk about risks, we're talking about potential issues that may or may not occur in the future and would negatively impact the program's ability to meet their commitment. Go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom if you currently practice risk management. Yay, I see Barb. I see Melissa. I see Adrian. Excellent. Douglas, very, very cool. Back in the day, I did risk management a little bit differently, but no matter the method, risk management is more than just identifying the risks. It's the idea that we're checking in on them and always working towards lessening the impact with a resolution or a mitigation. So again, back in the day, when I did risk management, I started because I had to do it. I was in a really highly regulated industry. And sometimes it was more about completing the risk matrix more than actually thinking through the exercise. So now I get more and more clients asking about risk management in the context of Rome. And what I've come to discover, again, is that when we're truly practicing risk management, the team is making better decisions. So if you're not familiar with Rome, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So SAFe highlights the Rome method for evaluating and resolving risks. And lucky for us, Jira Align supports roaming risks in the tool. The idea is that your teams and programs are considering what could go wrong in the quarter that would disrupt the plan that we've made. Those ideas are our risks, and we take those ideas and we roam them in an effort to lessen the impact. ROAM is an acronym that stands for Resolved, Owned, Accepted, and Mitigated. So let me know in the chat, in your opinion, when we are roaming risks, so we think about a risk and we decide, is that risk resolved? Is it owned? Is it accepted or mitigated? What do you think, or what status carries the most risk? Again, which status carries the most risk? Come on, guys, take a guess. I'm not even asking for anyone to unmute. Accepted. Thank you, Olympia. Accepted, exactly. Accepted risks are those that are just facts or potential issues that must be understood or accepted. So this means there's nothing to do. We've identified the risk and accepted it. And I have to tell you, I have a soapbox around this. I personally feel it's worth challenging every single accepted risk. I have this theory that any risk in accepted can be moved to another status.
I think that might be our tallest soapbox here at XPM. We talk about this a lot.
Real life example. So last week I was helping a team at a planning event, and there was a risk that a Agile team had. They were developing software, and they were going to use a new technology that they weren't familiar with. So how long it was going to take, or if it was even possible, those weren't known by the team. And so they accepted it. And I got on my soapbox and I said, now guys, come on, what can we do? And ultimately what the team decided to do was to do a research spike in an earlier iteration and then set aside more time at the end to actually work on developing that solution. Another example that I hear mostly when I talk about that I don't like accepted risks and we should always remove them, somebody says, well, what about a natural disaster? So for example, we know that there's likely going to be a big snowstorm that will impact the plan in some way. And while obviously we cannot change the path of the storm, what could we do? We could reduce the scope of the quarter. The business teams could work with their stakeholders to change the date on the release. Just some ideas. So if accepted is the most risky status, what do you think is the least?
The least risky.
So I see mitigated. It's a good guess. Resolved, I see from Mike and Melissa. Resolved, exactly. So resolved are those risks which we believe no longer pose a concern. Recently, I worked with a team that raised a risk where their firmware team was running code on hardware and they could only develop so far without the actual hardware. When they raised that risk in the event, the hardware team was there and they said, we have a beta unit of the hardware that we can give to you so that you can develop on that. And we actually resolved that risk.
Love it when they get resolved quickly.
Yes, love that. Very satisfying. Does anybody know what the difference between accepted and owned is? So when a risk is owned, an individual is taking on responsibility to essentially track a risk that can't be solved during the event. Accepting a risk is doing nothing. So, for example, we identify a risk that our team is understaffed to complete the work that's expected of us. And this is so common. I see it time and time again. And I would argue that letting the team accept that risk is a burden that they don't need. I've never been more moved than watching a manager move that type of risk from accepted by the team to owned by the manager. So owners of risk should be people who can move the needle of that risk, if not now, then in the future. Mitigating is a fancy word for lessening. So anything we can do to help the situation and make it a little less risky. So going back to the example of being short-staffed, can we mitigate that? Well, you could hire contractors. You could ask if there's another team who could help you. You could potentially ask the business if you can get more time. Or, I hate to say this one, but does it make sense to cut scope? These are all things that you could be asking. So let me ask you this now. Who here has Jira Align? I would like you to raise your hand in the chat. I can't remember. I'm not sure. Okay, excellent. Seeing more hands pop up. So this is excellent. Vicki is going to talk about some of the best practices for using Jira Align to manage risks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So as Elizabeth mentioned, Jira Align does have a risk module that helps us not only record our risks in the tool, but we're also able to roam them directly in Jira Align and then also view some reporting to get a high-level view of how our Agile release trains or our programs are really managing their risks PI to PI. The screenshot I have on my slide here is the Roam report, and anytime we are working with organizations who are utilizing the risk module in Jira Align, we immediately point them to this report. Again, it just gives that really high level, I think a clean visualization around really how our Agile release trains are managing their risks overall. What we hope to see is that they are resolving and mitigating risks using those statuses the most. But truthfully, especially with new trains who are new in the tool as well, we often see a really high amount of accepted risks. And I'm going to get back on our soapbox and say that, what we really love to do is work with our customers to help them realize that that is really how they're managing risks. They're accepting a lot of them, and work with them, as Elizabeth described, to really see if we could actually resolve, mitigate, or if someone can own that risk so we can resolve it or mitigate it in the future as well. Often risks are identified as a part of the PI planning process. I think that's really where we see the most risks being thought about and really being brought to the attention of the train. And what we like to see is when teams are utilizing Jira Align in that PI planning process, whether they're virtual or in person, getting those risks immediately in the tool. We see a lot of good feedback from teams when they say that we can just record those directly into the tool. What I want to do now is walk through this details panel of the risk work item from Jira Align and just call attention to a couple of fields that we like to recommend some best practices around. Starting with the resolution method field. So the resolution method I like to think of as the Roam field. It has 4 options of resolved, owned, accepted, and mitigated. Once you save your risk, you then also get the little risk diagram at the bottom. I think this is really great. It just has a brief description about each of the categories. It's really great for teams who are new to roaming risks, that it's right there in the tool. Like I mentioned, a lot of teams really like to start recording their risks as soon as they identify them in PI planning. What we often see, though, is that while they may identify them all throughout PI planning, sometimes trains have a designated time where they really want to go through that roam exercise. If that's the case for you, something that we like to recommend, because this resolution method field is required, go ahead and throw that accepted category or status on there. A couple reasons for that. First, we hope that they are not staying in the accepted category for long, so it can really be used as this default status. And second, the other resolution method options do add in some additional required fields. So if you choose mitigated or resolved, you will have an additional text field that is required. We really recommend filling this in when you do actually resolve or mitigate a risk, so you can take record of how you resolved or mitigated it. And if the risk comes up again or a similar risk in the future, we have that documented and we maybe can utilize that for resolving future risks as well. If you choose the owned status, the owner field does become required if it wasn't already. That accepted status doesn't require any additional fields, so it's great, again, to treat more as a default status, and then we move it to one of the other 3 categories during that roam exercise. A best practice that we really like to recommend for all work items in Jira Align, but especially with risks, is if there are fields on the details panel that do not serve your process, they aren't really meaningful to your organization, we really recommend turning those off. And 3 that we have seen cause some problems before are the occurrence, impact, and critical path fields. And these are turned on by default in the tool, and I think people think they sound really nice. And they do, but what we often see is that organizations don't really have a standard process around them. So different trains, different teams, and different individuals treat them differently. And any roll-up of this information, which there is some reporting on the risk roam report, any reporting around this really is skewed, really mostly because we're not using it the same way. So it really isn't a meaningful piece of information. If you're not using them, again, we recommend that you just turn them off. It's okay if you turn them off. Not every field is useful for everyone. If you do want to use them, we recommend developing that standard use case, documenting it, sharing it with everyone, and training your end users on it. We have one more final recommendation, and it's around the title of your risk. We really like to recommend developing a standard naming convention for your risks in Jira Align. And why we recommend this is because in a lot of areas of the tool, the Roam report, the risk widget in the program room, which we'll take a look at in just a second, as well as some of the grid views, the main two things that you see about all of the risks are the Roam status, so that resolution method field, and then the title field. And if you are wanting to dig in deep to each individual risk, that is great, but a lot of times we have people coming in wanting to look at a higher level and really see a broad category of where are we going to feel the most risks if we don't help the art or the teams really manage these. So what we like to recommend is developing a few categories that you can throw at the very beginning of your title. As you see here, we often work with the schedule, operational, technical, and budget categories. If your teams are identifying risks, that the main impact is that we won't be able to complete the work we've committed to in PI planning, we have a risk to the schedule. If we don't have sufficient requirements to develop this feature or whatever other work item it may be related to, we have an operational risk. A technical risk, Elizabeth gave some examples earlier. We have some complexities or challenges in the technical sphere that may delay us completing our work. And a budget risk is really just any risk that may impact the budget. We may incur penalty fees, or we may have to replace a bunch of tech. We are not by any means recommending that every title of every risk be the exact same. We still want teams to provide detail in the title, but when you begin your risks this way, it can give you a better high-level overview in a lot of those reporting areas. As always, we do recommend that you work with stakeholders to develop this common naming convention, document it for all to see, and train your end users on it. Just a quick example of the difference that this can make. On the left-hand side here, we see the widget from the program room showing us risks. We see a lot of information about these, but to get a detail of how they might be related, we'd have to dig into each of these. On the right, we've used our naming convention that I just walked through, and we can quickly see that a couple of these are related to technical risks. One is budget and one is schedule. Now, if I'm a business owner or a stakeholder, I'm able to easily come in here and see which one of these my area may be involved with and dig into those deeper. To put it all together, if you want to track your risks and you want to use Jira Align to do it, it's really important to develop some standard processes to ensure that we promote data integrity, or as I like to say, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. And to pull it back up to the top, we're practicing risk management to help us make better decisions. If the data is inconsistent, it doesn't help with that goal.
So just real quick before we go to the breakout rooms, we just want to say thank you again for having us. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions after this meeting about risk management, Jira Align, or practicing risk management and other Atlassian tools as well. We love to help implement this in Jira too.
Oh, nice job, guys. Really, really nice drilling on risk management. Obviously, Jira Align is a pretty vast tool. I think every area needs this type of drilling. And they kind of unravel this terminology, because I think new users, like I said, looking at all these fields and trying to back into how the out-of-the-box defaults are and stuff like that. Okay, let's go for the polls. You ready? How did they do? Okay, let's go. Come on. This is gonna warm up the money wheel. Warming up the money wheel, and also please turn off your mics. Let's talk about Jira Align. Let's talk about project management, or if you're using advanced roadmaps or Gantt charts or anything, would you consider using Jira Align? Have these discussions in these breakout rooms. Let's talk. 63%. Let's go. Doing good here, guys. Doing good. Trending well.
Give me one, hoping for more.
We've got one more. After this money wheel, we got more presentation, and we close out with one money wheel, and we can have some final discussions and whatever. But I want everyone to start thinking about the on-site last year rock party, November 15th. Live band, bartender, awesome food. It's gonna be a really fun time. Everyone's gonna be there. If you're not local to Boston, get your plane ticket now. 86%. Okay, let's open for a little bit longer here. If you don't participate in the poll, you do not participate in the money wheel. Okay, ending the poll and share the results. Great job, guys. You didn't get one, hoping for more. Fantastic job. Okay, let's go to the breakout rooms. Breakout rooms, get your mics off. 4 minutes, and we're going to go to our last presentation for more money winning. Here comes it.
No, but we probably should.
Yeah.
All right, we're back.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great job. So it's going very well. Hey, Steven, where are you from? He rings us up.
I've been in a bunch of these.
Okay.
Just go ahead and I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just scared you were from a partner or something like that. Or
Yeah. It was Beacon Hill.
Oh, nice. Okay, great. Now, are you guys a consulting partner?
I don't know. That's like business marketing stuff.
Okay, so who Ankur, I know you're a customer. Olympia, are you a Jira Line customer or thinking about being one?
No, we are a Jira customer. It's a small for the libraries.
Oh, nice.
Libraries, so it's within everything. So it's small. So this line is a little too big for our group.
That is great.
I got it. Now, are you using like advanced roadmaps or any Gantt charts or structure for Gantt or anything like that?
Well, the managers are looking at what is coming up all the time. The roadmap and align maybe, but right now I am focused on Jira and Jira Service Management.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Jira Service Management seems very library friendly.
Yeah.
And we've seen objectives and risks put into Jira as well, so you don't have to have a line to do any of this stuff, which is cool, I think.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
what your presentation has been very informative to refresh the concepts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
I love risk.
Absolutely.
I left the risk management dance out, the risk mitigation dance, because I don't know if you can see me, but it goes like this. When you're mitigating risks, it's really important to do this dance. Yes, exactly. You got to mitigate those risks.
Where is XPM?
We're in St. Louis, Missouri. Yeah.
It gets cold.
Yes, sir, it does.
Not as cold as Boston, probably, but it does get cold sometimes.
Right, exactly. Hey, so Ankur, I think you're like one of the few users here, over here. So how do you guys use this risk management module?
We started to use it and then stopped, to be honest.
Okay.
Because I actually helped stop it because it's better to do a good PI than to jump into risk right away.
Absolutely.
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
So did you stop doing risk roaming just as a part of the process as well?
We just, it was, I'm part of very tech heavy company. So people get very sort of into their head and tech about it. So we said, just let's go back to a one slide roam.
Yeah, sure.
We should just do that first.
Sure.
Once we do that for a couple of PIs, then we can go back to our
Absolutely. I love that.
With risk management, sometimes I see people are saying like, what if this happens and this happens and this happens? Like, how do we deal with that? And I'm like, nope, just one. Just back it up to one. Let's look at one scenario. It's so easy to do, especially with really intelligent, bright people. They seem to be able to be like, oh, but this and this and this and this and this.
And that's why I went back to a one page. Just give me not more than 5 risks. That's it.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Just 5.
Well, and
Yeah,
sometimes
4 plus 1. That was the
I like
1
that.
plus 1.
Sometimes people are confusing
How long?
dependencies and risks.
Yeah, we see that a lot.
We get 10 more seconds. Ankur, how long you're with MathWorks now, right?
No, I'm with a company similar to MathWorks called Waters.
Oh, water. Okay, we're coming back. All right, we're back out of the breakouts. How did
Recording in progress.
why does it do that again? Okay. Okay, we're back. How did the breakouts go? Did people talk? Do we have some talking going on here?
Yeah, you didn't tell us that you have a ringer thrown in these sessions with your son joining.
Oh yes.
It was nice to talk with him.
Oh, great. Well, that's good to hear. Well, it's always good to have more people to help with these things because these events are quite an undertaking to do. To get all the people here and get the word out and all that kind of stuff. It definitely takes a bit of a crew here. So did everyone have a chance to talk? Was there some engagement going on? Yes? Yes, we talked. Yes, we had some questions. Okay, so let's look at what we got for any questions here. So one is, are the templates for these risks that corresponds to standards? Are there templates for these risks that correspond to standards?
What kind of standards?
The best practices we're recommending.
Yeah.
The standards we just talked
Well, I
about.
was just thinking from a risk management, are we
Yeah.
talking about ISO? Like, there are a lot of different regulations. So, the screen that we had up had most of those turned on. I saw that the consequence field was off, but most of them were on. And risk is a great place to standardize across the organization, but in the tool, you could make a risk screen for every portfolio that you configured within a line. Did you have anything to add?
No, just, I would just work around, talk about the fields. Do they help our process? No, turn them off. And then you have a pretty good template of the fields that really do matter.
Okay, we also have our risk tagged to stories or ethics or teams.
Great question. So the risks can be linked to most work items in the tool. Where we see them linked most often is typically features. Again, a lot of these are identified during PI planning. So a lot of times we're tagging them to those features. What's really great is if you have an open risk linked to a feature on your program board, it will turn that feature yellow. And so a lot of times in some of those management reviews, some of those sessions where we're looking at the overall plan, we can really identify those quickly. I believe they can also be linked to stories. They aren't really linked to teams, but you can put responsible individuals on them.